All right, well, why wait until Friday? Hey, it's Thursday night, and the Islanders have rolled into town, and we're over here in West Little Rock, SFAVolleyBlog.net. Greg Miller with you. We'll be with you all this weekend long. First, Coach, you and I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk before. We may have cause to sit down and talk many times this weekend, but first, super congratulations on Coach of the Year coming in. I want to just say that off the top. Just congratulations for a great coaching year at Corpus Christi.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a great season. Obviously, like the team was really welcoming when I came in, and I think testament to them for a changeover of staff and a couple new players, a couple new positions, and I think it's about them. And we just came in and tried not to screw up too much of what Coach Greystone had done. I mean, he did an awesome job, and my goal was really not to screw it up and just kind of continue the tradition and obviously implement some things that we're doing. But I'm really proud of the way the players handled it, and I think it's a difficult situation for them, but they did it really well.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. That was exactly what I had for the first thing I wanted to ask you is, if you come into a program that's 2-14, it'd almost be expected you come in and like, hey, we got to shake some things up. We're going to do things different. We haven't been successful. You came into a program that was extremely successful, went to the NCAAs. So where's the right balance there coming in the front door to be able to preserve what you got but put your own spin on things?
I think a lot of it is what the goals of the team were, and then they align, of course, perfectly with mine. And it was, continue winning conference as best we can, try to compete to be, at the top of the conference, and, obviously going undefeated in regular season kind of surpassed a little bit of that. I mean, it's great. But it was to go as far as we could in the NCAA tournament, to compete nationally, to try to get, a chance to knock off some of the top-ranked teams in the country. And, I've been lucky to be at Texas A&M the last few years and go to the playoffs every year. And have a chance to knock off some of those teams, and I know what that looks like. I know what it feels like, and so coming here, I mean, that was our goal, is to try to get us to that level, and it is a process, and it takes time, and I think this year we've done some things that have put us in a position to do that, and hopefully, if we're successful this weekend and put together 3 great matches, we have another opportunity.
Now that we're to the back end of at least the conference part of things, when you look back, what would you surmise the girls would say about the main thing that's different now? I mean, when you first got to know them, you had to get to know them, you had to get to know the island, everything down there. But now that you're at the point where they're acclimated to your system, what do you think they'd say is different now than different last year?
I think there's a lot of different things. Obviously, I think Coach Greystone and I had different coaching styles, and I think one thing they would say is different is just, offensively we do some things differently on the court. I think off the court we do some things a little bit differently. It's just a different culture, different style. Teams tend to reflect, their coaching staff, and, they tend to reflect the leaders of the team, and I think last year's team, had some great seniors, leadership-wise in the outside hitter position, defensively, and, with them leaving and Coach Greystone and his staff leaving, it gave us the opportunity to really change some things up. And, Morgan Carlson has done, and Kate Kopeka have really done a great job kind of leading this team offensively and defensively and off the court. And, allowing us as a new coaching staff to kind of come in and put our spin on things. Different, yes, for sure, but, specifically not. I don't know. It's hard to kind of pinpoint because I wasn't here last year, and so I don't know exactly. And you can, ask players maybe more a little different. But, from my end, I would just say volleyball-wise, it's, a little quicker offense, a little more focus on scoring points, not necessarily as much of a defensive focus.
When you've got something good, whatever it is, you tend to be protective of it, whether that's, your wife, kid, job, record that you've built up. But what do you do when that target's on your back? Because, I mean, you're protective of the facts. What have you got to do as a coach to make sure that, hey, I don't like soften everything so much that it's fragile that, hey, we're 16-0 last year. One loss is going to look so big in the context of 32 wins. What about that target on the back? How do you maintain that with the club?
I think for me, I don't really worry about it too much, honestly. I focus and I try to get the team to focus on just getting a little bit better each day. And that's been, that's a program philosophy of incremental changes. If we can improve an individual by 5%, if we can improve our passing by 5%, and you start doing that week to week, and suddenly, it's difficult for other teams to and to handle those changes that you're making. And so, I don't look at anything farther than the next day, whether the next day is a practice or if it's a match. And looking back, 16-0 is awesome. Looking back, we've done some really, really good things. We've come a long way this season, but looking forward, tomorrow we play McNeese, and McNeese is a tough team that we did play really well against at home a couple weeks ago, but they have some weapons that are difficult for us to stop. And so we're looking to change up a couple things and get a little bit better in each day, and that's all we're trying to do. And as long as we put out a good performance, we're happy. We can't control what the other teams do, and people have tested us a lot this season, and sometimes we're happy with our performance, sometimes we're not. And so our goal is just to kind of enjoy their performance and hopefully improve.
You mentioned at one point earlier changes in coaching philosophy. We've got a lot of work to be done on both sides of this bracket for if the top two seeds are going to meet. Our team is clearly a defensive-minded team, a team that led the conference in opponent hitting percentage, blocking, digs. You guys, like you said, a lot of great offensive players. So you answered this in part, but is that sort of a reflection of sort of your mindset on volleyball? Some coaches will call themselves even Steven, on, no pun intended, on sort of the offense-defensive side, but it sounds like you got more of an offensive-minded go-to set.
It's interesting. I've always kind of thought of myself as an offensive-minded coach, and that's sort of been just kind of my philosophy when I was a player, and definitely as a coach, the last decade or so. But then the last 5 years at Texas A&M, they're very defensive-minded staff. Lori and John Corbelli are both just amazing coaches on both sides of the ball, but have a very defensive philosophy and a ball control philosophy, and it is rubbed off on me for sure. And now I kind of see the importance of a quality defense and quality ball control in order to create that offense. And so I think I still have that offensive mentality, but I think I do tend to focus a lot on the defensive side to get us to that point, and that's part of the staffing. I think, our top assistant, Michelle Cole, and our other assistant, Brandon Chan, have really done a great job of making sure that, our defense is on point, and our ball control is good enough so that we can run the offense we want.
You also mentioned small improvements, 5% increments in this player or one facet of the game. At 16-0, what does have to get better? I mean, to go in there and to win 3 games this weekend, what have you been preaching to your kids about this facet of what we got to do has got to be cleaned up?
Our serve-receive game has been really good, but, our first ball side out is not exactly as high as I want it to be. It's solid. I think it's competitive for sure in the conference, but I think it can be better at times. The other thing I think we can do better is our defensive transition. I think, we do dig a decent amount of balls. I think our dig quality could be a little bit better than it actually is, so that we can run an offense. And then that way we can get some more transition points. I think we do get beat there, with transition points at times. Our side-out game is pretty solid, but I think, a little bit better there. But our focus has been defensive transition lately.
And last, Coach, just one senior. Carlson will be the only one that steps out after your run is over. And I noticed this week you brought in 7. You had a big announcement. Of course, all the teams are doing this time of the year. You have early signing period, NLIs, a lot up on social media about who's going where. You guys brought in a class of 7. I wanted to ask you about that to finish. Is that with the intent to add depth to the roster? Is that the intent to battle it out for the 1 or 2 spots? Because it appears as though, in large part, the roster's intact. So explain a little bit about why you, in your first recruiting class, wanted to go with that many kids.
It's interesting. It's not necessarily planned per se. I inherited a really strong group, and pretty limited on the top of senior-wise, obviously, with just Carlson. But we do have some other things that, going on with our roster's not that big. We only have 13 players on our roster right now. And so, losing 1 drops us to 12, bringing in 7 pushes us to 19. 16, 18 is kind of a typical Division I roster size at this point. The reality was there's just a lot of talent that was, that I had already had connection with, recruiting-wise, and really excited to bring them in. And, whether or not they're 2017 or 2018 wasn't necessarily the factor. It was, hey, I want to get as many talented players as we can to come and play at Corpus Christi. And, it worked out perfectly. It's a really well-rounded group. We are possibly looking at redshirting a couple of them. They don't necessarily all have to stay in that class, but it's just one of those things. Recruiting, there's no perfect answer. That's one thing I've learned. Coaching wise, is best laid plans always kind of fall apart, and so with injuries and there's always unfortunately the transfer side of things as well, and so we just always look to hopefully just bring in the best talent we can year after year, and it's a really strong class. I'm thrilled about it. Every one of those kids is going to help us a ton, and so thrilled about them, but also really glad to be bringing back a really strong group.
Well, Texas A&M Corpus Christi Islanders, there was a time, some of you at SFA will remember this, there was a time when this program was not anywhere near the top of the Southland Conference. When they first entered, they really struggled. This program has been turned completely around. We're better as a conference for having the strength that Corpus Christi brings. Going to be a great battle this weekend. You'll face off with McNeese in the third slot. Our group's probably in bed. We have the early slot tomorrow. Chris Mykowski will be on the call. I'll have the call for the Islanders versus McNeese. Coach, thanks so much for being willing to sit and chat.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I love what you're doing for the conference. Love what you're doing for volleyball. And, obviously I do want to, commend Coach Greystone and his staff for what they did to bring, talent to this program and really build it to the point we're at now.
That's gracious of you. They'll get started tomorrow. Thanks, Coach. That's a wrap. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.